Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a close look at what I genuinely believe is the ultimate historical cold case. We're going to unpack the incredible story and the completely baffling mystery of Alexander the Great's missing tomb. Just think about it for a second. How does the single most famous person in the ancient world just vanish off the face of the earth? Well, together, we're going to trace his extraordinary rise, his absolute conquest of the known world, his sudden death in Babylon, and the centuries-long search for his final resting place. Okay, let's dive into this massive paradox. Because on one hand, you have the man himself. Imagine achieving absolute global supremacy. You're leading armies across brutal deserts, defeating powerful kings, and building an empire that stretches across 3 entirely different continents, all before you even hit age 30. But then on the other hand, after achieving all that unimaginable glory, his final resting place is just completely erased from the map. It's been lost for more than 2,000 years. Nobody knows where he's buried. Despite centuries of dedicated searching, the mystery remains totally unsolved. It is literally the greatest tomb never found. So, to understand how we got here, you really just have to look at the sheer speed of his life. Born in the ancient kingdom of Macedon in 356 BCE, Alexander showed extraordinary intelligence and ambition from a really young age. He famously studied under the brilliant philosopher Aristotle. But, he didn't just want knowledge. The guy wanted glory. And look how fast it happens. At just 20 years old, he becomes king. A mere 12 years after that, he dies in Babylon. In just over a single decade, he went from Aristotle's ambitious student to a world conqueror, and then met this sudden demise. The velocity of what he achieved is honestly hard to even comprehend. And this brilliantly illustrates his totally explosive military campaigns. First, he marches out and entirely defeats the mighty Persian Empire, which, by the way, was the reigning superpower of the day. Then, he successfully captures Egypt, where he was welcomed practically as a living god. Finally, he pushes even further, conquering vast territories stretching deep into Asia, reaching all the way to India. City after city fell before him. Within just a few short years, he controlled one of the largest empires the world had ever seen. This rapid, unstoppable expansion is exactly why history remembers him as Alexander the Great. But then, we hit this number, 32. I really want us to pause here, because this is where the narrative pivots sharply. It's the year 323 BCE. Alexander is at the absolute, dizzying height of his power. He has everything. He practically owns the world. And then, everything changed. While in Babylon, Alexander became seriously ill. For days, his condition worsened as this mysterious fever took hold. His generals gathered around his bed, desperate for a successor. And then, the impossible happened. The unstoppable force of nature was suddenly halted. At just 32 years old, his life was abruptly and permanently cut short. The conqueror of the world died. That phrase alone kind of sends a chill down your spine, doesn't it? Imagine the absolute shock this sent through the ancient world. People literally couldn't comprehend it. The story of humanity shifted in a single instant, from this tale of endless, unstoppable conquest to one of sudden, gripping chaos. The man who seemed practically immortal was just gone. But as we're about to see, the story of his life was over, but an even greater, much stranger mystery was just beginning to unfold. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer geopolitical drama of it all. Alexander's body was considered absolutely priceless. In fact, his funeral procession was essentially hijacked. Legend tells us that to preserve his body for the long journey back home, he was submerged in a massive vat of honey. His remains were then placed inside an extraordinary coffin, literally covered in pure gold and surrounded by immense treasures. So the journey of his body became this huge event. Why? Because everyone wanted control of his remains. One of his own generals, a guy named Ptolemy, literally intercepted and stole the procession to bring the body to Egypt. Possessing that gold-covered coffin equated to ultimate political power and prestige. Basically, whoever held Alexander held his legacy. So where did this stolen, priceless procession actually end up? Well, the body was eventually taken to the magnificent city of Alexandria in Egypt, which, conveniently, is the very city Alexander himself had founded. And for a long time, we knew exactly where he was. Historical records tell us that for centuries, his resting place was a massively high-profile destination. We're talking about visits from the most powerful people in history. There's this incredible story that Julius Caesar stood at the tomb and actually wept, crying because by Alexander's age, Caesar felt he had achieved practically nothing. Decades later, the Roman Emperor Augustus visited and supposedly leaned in so close to kiss the conqueror that he accidentally broke the mummy's nose. It really was the ancient world's greatest monument. But here is where the suspense really builds, because for centuries we have meticulous historical documentation of emperors, queens, and rulers visiting this magnificent tomb in Alexandria. We have actual eyewitness accounts. But then, the historical records just suddenly stop. Somewhere in history, this massive, highly visited, world-famous tomb simply vanished. No one knows exactly when it happened, and honestly, no one knows exactly how. All records of the greatest tomb in history inexplicably evaporate into thin air, leaving us totally in the dark. So, the crucial point is, what could possibly cause something so monumental to just vanish? Historians and archaeologists suspect a few devastating culprits. Was it destroyed in one of the many brutal wars that swept through the region during the fall of the Roman Empire? Or maybe it was swallowed by the earth during a massive earthquake, which we know heavily damaged ancient Alexandria. Did severe coastal floods wash it away into the Mediterranean Sea? Or actually, scratch that, was it intentionally dismantled and hidden during times of violent religious and political upheaval? Many explanations have been proposed over the years, but to this day, not a single one provides a complete, definitive answer. Which brings us to what we can officially define as the ultimate cold case. I want you to put yourself in the shoes of the modern researchers and archaeologists who are still desperately hunting for clues today. For centuries, explorers have been trying to solve this giant puzzle. They are constantly investigating ancient texts, trying to read between the lines of old Roman manuscripts, and carefully examining forgotten ruins. Numerous locations have been proposed. In fact, some researchers deeply believe that the tomb still lies hidden right beneath the modern bustling streets and towering buildings of Alexandria today. But so far, despite millions of dollars and decades of digging, no theory has been entirely proven. And the stakes for solving this cold case? They literally could not be higher. Just imagine the mind-boggling, untouched treasures that might still be inside this tomb. If it is ever discovered, we are looking at legendary golden artifacts, pristine ancient weapons, royal treasures from across the known world, and perhaps most importantly, lost historical records from the ancient library. We are talking about objects that have been completely untouched for more than 2,000 years. Finding this wouldn't just be a neat discovery, it would be an earth-shattering archaeological event that could completely rewrite parts of human history. Let's move on and see how this builds into why this mystery matters so deeply to us today. Because Alexander wasn't just a military figure. He changed the ancient world forever. His conquests spread ideas across entire continents. He shared ancient cultures, united different, sprawling populations under a common language, and massively expanded global knowledge through the cities he founded. His impact on human history is practically immeasurable, and that creates this deep, profound irony. The man who became famous across the entire world, the man whose actions shaped the course of Western civilization, simply cannot be found. Which leaves us with this haunting question. Where is Alexander the Great? More than 2,300 years have passed. Countless empires have risen and fallen since he took his last breath in Babylon. Entire cities have been built up and utterly destroyed. Yet the mystery remains, somewhere out there, perhaps beneath the blowing sands of Egypt, or maybe hidden deep beneath the noisy streets of modern Alexandria. He's still waiting, undiscovered, guarding one of history's greatest secrets. Will we ever finally close this cold case, or will he forever remain the greatest tomb never found?